Many of us independent artists shy away from mastering, thinking it's too technical, that you need tons of experience, advanced, very expensive gear, a treated room, great speakers, and all that's true. But you can definitely do more than you think. So in this video, I want to show you a super simple 3 effects mastering chain that I personally use for years. I pretty much have it in every track waiting to be dialed in. It's minimal, it's clean, and most importantly, it doesn't hurt your music. It actually makes it better and prepares it for self-released music on Bandcamp, SoundCloud, YouTube, or if you want to share some tracks on social media, this is a chain for you. So it's a simple stereo recording from the octa tracks that we're going to master today. So the way the chain goes is we have an EQ which does some corrective things, and I call this also some safety nets that we're going to apply. The second plugin we're going to use is a saturation plugin, and the idea is not the saturation itself, but it's glue. You can use a bus compressor, you can use tape saturation, you can use tube saturation, or a simple compressor. And the goal is to apply glue to make everything sound more like it's one piece, like it's cohesive. Especially if you have a song that's been completely created from many different sound sources, everything can sound a little bit all over the place, and giving it this glue, this feeling that it belongs together, that everything fits together, that's what the glue is used for. And the last plugin in chain is a limiter. Now, a limiter is a very special compressor which will always pull everything up to a certain ceiling. So the limiter makes things loud. That's their job. They bring everything up in loudness, and that's why it's always last in chain. Now, as you can see, it's actually a very simple and straightforward chain. So let's talk about the individual effects and how to set them up. So the first plugin I pull up is the Pro Q3. It's my go-to equalizer when I don't want anything that's adding color. The first thing is, and I already have this mastering preset that I've come up with loaded in my main bus, my mastering channel here. So the first thing I do is I have a low cut at around 30 Hertz. And the reason for this is very simple. Most PA systems, big speaker systems, and I've talked with a buddy who's doing events, and actually he's also setting up the speaker system, the PA. He's building the speakers and pretty much everything himself. So when he does events, he has a low cut at 40 Hertz, and sometimes with a very steep curve, just for the reason that below that most speaker systems can't produce the frequencies there. Let alone everything below 20 Hertz, you can't hear it anyways. However, these frequencies will affect especially compressors and limiters. But if you don't hear them and the speaker system can't replicate them, so there's no way for you to actually feel it on your body, it's no need to have this frequency area in your music, which is affecting other plugins. So that's why I have this low cut here, usually at 30 Hertz. That's what I used most of the time, and really I don't do any more and don't think more about that than this. So the second thing I do with the EQ is I put a low cut on at around 200 Hertz on just the sides. And I do this to create mono bass, to make everything that's below 200 Hertz mono. Coming back to big PA systems, while they are definitely stereo nowadays, in many cases they still fold the bass to mono. And when you fold bass low end frequencies to mono, a few things happen. First of all, if you're lucky, you don't get phase cancellation because you've taken already care of that in your mix. So, and the reason why I do this instead of using a simple mono maker plugin, one which narrows the stereo field, is they tend to fold or overlap the left and the right channel, and that almost always creates phase cancellation. And in some cases, it almost completely eliminates the bass or the low end. And suddenly you play your track at home and it sounds great in full, and then you play it on a big speaker system and it sounds flat and lacks energy. And that's the worst thing that could happen, and you don't want to do that, or you don't want to have that. So the cleaner way to solve this problem is to use an EQ which can lower the volume on just the sides. Remember, an EQ is a frequency specific volume fader. So by doing this low cut, I'm not folding my audio to mono. I'm actually pulling down the volume on the sides, leaving just the stereo center, the stereo mono intact, and thus eliminating those phase cancellation issues. Now you can play around with how low you want to go. I would typically go up to 200 hertz, and that tends to work very, very well. Now, what you can do, and this is optional if you have, like I have here, a plain stereo recording where I haven't had the chance to control some of the lower mids, I would scoop out some of the frequencies with a very shallow curve, just giving it a few decibels only to clean up. Let's have a listen. This area which tends to sound always a little bit boxy, but that's pretty much it EQ wise. Now you may be wondering why I'm not adding frequencies, why I'm not doing this and that. The thing I tend to do is I only make sure that I get rid of everything that can hurt my music, but I don't want to affect it too much. Now with a stereo file like this, like a jam recorded, you can do a few more things. If you have really annoying frequencies, just pull them down. But if you have a properly mixed song and you feel the need to go in the mastering stage and pulling out certain frequencies because you finally, or you notice that there are some resonances, go back to your mixing and fix it on the individual tracks there. So the next plugin I use is tube saturation or any other saturation, or a bus compressor if you have one that you really like. And by really like, I mean that you figured out sounds great for the purpose that you're using it. So, and the goal here is to glue things together, and saturation works well in the sense that it's distorting the audio just a little bit and thus giving everything a same tonal character, and that just magically makes music sound glued together. So I would just crank it up until I would hear some things happening, not too much. So the last plugin is the limiter, and the limiter again is here to make music loud. So with the limiter you have an input threshold, that's the threshold at which the limiter starts to act, and then you have a ceiling parameter, that's how loud the limiter will pull the audio, your loudness up to. As you can see here on my main channel, we can pull it up, but I tend to leave some headroom, and Once we've set the headroom, we can start to increase the threshold until we can hear, until we get into the area where we start to see some gain reduction. And let me turn this down. So as you can notice already, the limiter makes things very loud. So, and I will pull this up back in a minute again. So the goal is to just get a little bit of gain reduction. I tend to do around -3 tops. So pick a space where a lot of energy is happening. That's usually with all the bass. And if you keep the gain reduction at a good level, you're golden. Alright, so bring this up. And that's it for the mastering. Hard to believe. Of course, this is just the beginning. What you can now experiment with is, for example, multiband compression, EQs that add color. If you have audio recorded through a mixer, they tend to do a similar thing like this tube saturation for glue. So basically, because I've recorded everything from the Octatrack, and the Octatrack kind of has its main out, and all tracks go through this main out, this applies some glue itself. So probably I don't need this effect at all. So I can make this chain even simpler and just apply some safety nets here from the EQ side of things, and then just go straight into the limiter and bring everything up to the loudness level that I want. While we're talking about limiters, let's also talk about LUFS. LUFS stands for loudness units relative to full scale, and that's basically a measurement of the overall loudness, and it helps audio engineers to create a consistent perception of volume throughout an EP, for example, or an album. But it's also used on the different platforms that we upload our music to. And every platform has their own limitations. So for example, if we look this up, you can see YouTube has -14, social media and other don't have any. Just take your standard level metering plugin that you have, configure it to R128, set it to LUFS, and then go to a section of your song that is very intense with a lot of energy, and have it run, because in the background it's counting. You can go to reset, and as you can see here already, my stuff is way too loud for YouTube, and you set the threshold so it's not exceeding 14 LUFS, as we just read from the table that we got. So here's a section with kick drum and everything. 14.8, we can do a little bit more. So we're getting a little bit over 14, and that's pretty much all I would do. And that's, my friend, is it for today. Let me know in the comments below how you like this mastering chain. Let me know if you have any questions or any suggestions on how you would use it or how you would change it. Again, it's just the starting point, and really have a good reason to add in more plugins. And if the reason is experimentation, it's all good, but don't use complex mastering chains just because someone else is using them. Give them a try and really figure out what they're doing. Again, for me, for most cases, this is all I do, and it sounds great and good enough. And if I want more, if I want a better mastering, I would give it to someone who really knows their stuff. And when I work with labels, they do the mastering anyways. So no need to stress about this too much. Clean up your audio a little bit, give it some glue, make sure it's loud, but also make sure it's not too loud. So yeah, it's basically 4 plugins, but the fourth plugin doesn't really do anything other than telling us that what we've did here is all right. Thanks for watching, and yeah, just share the good vibes and see you next time.